6:30 in the morning. And I would like us to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone will stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to indicate that proper notice has been given as required by our Ohio Revised Code 121.22. So we're going to move through our agenda. Looks like doesn't look too bad today. First on our agenda is to approve our board meeting minutes from the June 9th meeting 2020, and everyone should have received their copy of those minutes. And does anyone have any additions or corrections of the minutes? Have you had an opportunity to review them?
Yes. With that, I'll make a motion that we approve the June 9th, 2020 board meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to turn the meeting, I guess, over to you, Sherry, regarding registered voter challenges, a hearing.
Yes. Chuck Eckert, our registration administrator, is prepared to present the challenges to the board.
Thank you, Chuck.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
As per instructions at the last board meeting, staff was sent to the 16 properties listed by the city of Cincinnati as being demolished to do a site inspection and take photographs. If you will recall, the land bank provided photos of the demolished buildings. The city of Cincinnati did not. I asked them why, and they said their funding does not provide for that. So on June the 9th, a staff member went to the 16 properties, and it was determined that 4 of those properties were in fact not demolished. So you have a spreadsheet, registered voters at 2019 demolished buildings, city of Cincinnati. The right column lists if the property was demolished or not demolished, and you've been provided in your packet with a set of photographs for all of those properties. They are numbered to correspond with the addresses on the spreadsheet. And I did contact Ed Cunningham, the Deputy Director from the Department of Buildings and Inspections with the City of Cincinnati, inquiring as to why these properties that were not in fact demolished appeared on the demolished properties list. And I gave you a copy of his email response. Basically, he said the hazard abatement work at the 4 locations that were not demolished involved hazard abatement or demolition of buildings accessory to the principal structure. So an outbuilding on the property was in fact demolished, and it was a coding issue as to why those properties inadvertently appeared on the list. So.
That's interesting. Chuck, can I interrupt for a second? So
Certainly.
those properties, presumably people live there still.
Yes,
So the outbuildings were demolished. That's a good thing we went.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because a couple of these, as I perused the pictures, they look like they're actively lived in. A couple of them even look kind of nice, really.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
And no trespassing signs, so it's people who, well, good. That's good to know.
All right, so moving ahead, you have a spreadsheet, challenge voters, June 9th, 2020. 58 voters appeared on the challenge spreadsheet. On June the 12th, letters were sent to each voter along with a copy of the challenge and a registration form. I want to point out that voters number 1 and number 3, we did receive address updates on those 2 from the NCOA address change that we just recently received from the Secretary of State. So of the remaining 56 voters, we had mail returned from 50 of them as undeliverable. 2 of them had a forwarding address, so we remailed to those. But I do want to point out that the 6 voters that we did not receive recent return mail from, we have received prior return mail from them, from a prior mailing before the challenge was put on the record.
So out of the total, what was the total now, 60?
Well, there's 58 on the spreadsheet, but we have address updates on 2, so those challenges would be removed. So there's 56 remaining.
great. 56, okay.
And just to clarify, how many of the properties did we find that there was actually still a house?
4, but those properties are not appearing on the spreadsheet.
Okay.
4, there were 16 total on the city list.
Right.
We did a site inspection of all 16, and 4 of those were not demolished.
I guess the point I was trying to get at is that when somebody submits a challenge list to us, they don't actually take the time to make sure that there's actually been a demolition. Seems that it should be incumbent on the people making the challenge to verify that demolition has actually taken place.
These challenges did not come before the board based on an elector challenging these voters. This is the standard list that we receive from the city of Cincinnati and from the land bank. We receive those every year, a listing of the buildings they demolished the year before, and then we send letters to those voters asking them to confirm if they've moved and to update their address. So these challenges did not come before the board based on another qualified elector. They came to us just based on the list we received from other government agencies.
Thank you for that clarification.
That's good. I just want to say how effective that site inspection was, and it also provided, with the buildings that we thought were demolished and were not, it just shows it takes more eyes than one to really find out, you know, what the real situation is. So the more information we get, the better we can make a critical decision. And so I applaud you all for going out there and taking care of that in a timely manner.
Chuck, this is my fault. I was perusing the photographs and got a little lost during your very important explanation of the 58 voters. I don't know if maybe the rest of the bank or the rest of the board understood and is ready. I'm not yet ready to make a vote until I understand it. So there are 58 people listed here. You said 2 of them had corrected their situation, or?
We received an NCOA address update, and
Got it.
those are voters number 1 and voters number 3.
Okay, so 1 and 3 on the spreadsheet have both fixed. Okay, and then of the 56 that are remaining, how many of those, are the 24 on the other spreadsheet in that 56, or are these separate lists?
No, they're all on the same
They're on the
spreadsheet, yes.
same,
So
okay.
this list is both the land bank land redevelopment and also the city of Cincinnati properties that were demolished.
Got it.
Anyone else? Do you have any questions, Caleb?
And then, so the 4, Chuck, that were not demolished are voters, looks like 1 through 4 live this, I'm looking at the registered voters 2019 demolished buildings spreadsheet.
That is just from the prior
Right?
hearing. So the 4 that are on this spreadsheet, Alex,
Yep,
are not appearing on this spreadsheet.
That's right.
they're not appearing on, okay, so that's good, so we just got it.
Correct.
Okay. But we're confident that the 56 that remain are not, these houses are in fact demolished.
We do have supporting photographs
Yeah.
of all 56 now.
Got it. Okay,
We
fair enough.
received photographs again from the Port Authority, and then our photographs for the city of Cincinnati properties.
Understood, okay, got it. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, with that, then I'm prepared to make a motion that we challenge the 56 remaining voters on the challenged voters June 9th, 2020 document that was delivered to us that excludes voters 1 and 3 since they've already been taken care of, and that we challenge those other 56. Again, so it's clear, what we've done for a long time here is not to remove them for the voter rolls or anything like that. It's just to place a challenge on their record, so
Right.
if in fact they show up to vote, we can help them get to the right place.
I'll second that motion.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for the detailed work that you did as well and
Yeah,
continue to do.
thanks for the extra effort, Chuck.
Next on the agenda is authorize an amendment to lease 4700 Smith Road Facility resolution. Can you discuss that in more detail, Sherry, for us?
Yes, in your packet, you have a copy of the resolution. It's numbered 2020-003. You also have some photographs that go along with this resolution. If you recall, in a previous meeting, staff had reported that there was some additional space becoming available in the facility next to the board. It's on the same campus, owned by the same property owner. And since then, additional space in that property has become available, over 15,000 square feet. So the deputy director and I feel, along with, in consultation with the administrators, that it would be best to move in-person voting to that building. Again, it's on the same campus. We share the same parking lot, because it will double the space of what we currently have in this building for in-person voting. And in order to keep social distancing due to COVID, we feel it's vital that we move to a larger facility. We did see lines here on April 28th when we had in-person voting that was strictly due to social distancing requirements. And in the past, we had a little over 500 voters vote on April 28th, and in the past, we could process that number of voters with little wait at all. But that's not what we saw on the 28th because of the social distancing. So we want to avoid that coming up in November. And also wanted to know, we were going to discuss this a little later in other business, but we recently received word that we would be receiving a little over $700,000 in our share of the CARES funding from the Secretary of State's to specifically pay for election-related items due to COVID. So we would be using that funding to lease this property from August 1st to November 30th.
Sure, you said it was 15,000 square feet?
It's a little over.
A little over that?
Yeah, 15.
And what are we in now, so about 8 or something, or 7? You said it was twice as big.
Yeah, 6,900, I believe.
Yeah. And then what's the plan for the existing space?
That space will then be used to process the mail.
Okay.
So when the mail comes in again for social distancing, and we expect such a large increase in vote by mail for this election, so that space will be used for that process.
Okay.
Jared, since we have received the $701,000, and one of the things that I asked last week was to do a deep analysis, is that going to be enough for us? And how much will the lease cost us during that period of time?
We're still negotiating with the landlord for the cost of the lease. This resolution would authorize the deputy director and I to do that, continue with those negotiations, and then execute. So the building is not 100%, just the entrance to the building is not 100% ADA compliance. So of course, that's absolutely necessary for a polling place. So landlord's getting quotes on that now. When we get those, then we'll work on the final terms of the lease as far as the cost. Regarding the cost analysis of the CARE funds, staff is still working on that.
Okay.
We're getting quotes for all of the items we think that we need, and the secretary did provide a very detailed directive that lays out a CARES funding grant plan that every board must complete, and it's due at the end of this month.
So with that directive that you've received, it's like a checklist, of what you need to do, and then how you've done it, what was done, and what the outcomes, correct?
Yes, pretty much, yes. A checklist with deadlines and examples of what the funding can be spent on, and then progress reports that will be submitted each month to the secretary as we move through implementing all the various items that we're purchasing for the election.
And from your optic lens, did you see anything that you felt that we could not do, or anything that we perhaps could do more of? Enhanced and better utilization of the dollars?
I don't think we saw anything that we don't believe we can't do. I don't think there's any limitations. We're fortunate with the facility that we have here, and being able to spread out and social distance the way we are, and this additional leasing of this property will help that when we bring in all the temporary staff that will be needed.
So you and Sally are both in agreement to this? You've gone through it, both of you together?
Yes, and we're continuing to. I mean, we outlined it yesterday with some of the administrators, and then as we put the plan together that we have to submit to the Secretary's office, it'll be, more of the details will be fleshed out. But,
Okay.
yeah, we're working very closely, trying to follow the guidelines to make sure that we spend everything that we are allotted to spend
Okay,
to
okay.
ensure safety and voting.
So do we as a board need to sign off on that document once you all have completed it?
It did not have those details on it. The director and myself had to sign the agreement
Okay.
that we sent in yesterday.
And you plan to review that document with your key staff leaders here to make sure?
And we have begun that already.
Right.
Yeah, with our administrators.
Okay, because that's going to be critical.
Yeah,
too.
right now, we're getting counts of what we had in reserve that we had ready for March, April,
Mhm.
and then what do we need beyond that?
Okay, okay.
I have a question. So as I'm looking at the building, it has a different address, it looks like?
Yes, it's, the address is actually 2300 Wall
Yeah.
Street.
Any concern, and again, I'm 100% in favor of this, I just thought I'd ask out loud. Any concern with confusion, having people think it's a different place? Are we going to keep 47 and listed and then just guide them there with signage? Is that the idea?
That was the idea, to keep the 4700 listed and then guide them with signage and staff.
Yeah, sure. Fair enough.
With the resolution that I'm looking at currently, it does not have the address of the facility unless I'm looking at the wrong.
It does, actually, in the
Where do you see that?
fourth paragraph down. 2300 Wall Road.
Okay, all right, there we go. I was thinking it should have been in bold at the top,
Well, the amendment, though, would be the lease to this property,
right?
which, I mean, again, technically, I guess you could execute a different lease, but we're just amending this one to add that space, so I don't think there's an issue.
Okay,
And that's what we've done in the past when we've list property on the campus from the same owner for poll worker training. Before we had a poll worker training center on site, we would just amend the
Okay.
current lease of 4700 Smith Road.
Yeah, I mean, once people get here, we can get them there, is
Yes.
thinking, right?
Yes.
how long has that space been vacant?
I believe US Bank moved out in May.
Of this year?
So yes, it has not been vacant long.
Okay.
And you know, if you said this year, I missed it, we would just have it just for early voting, or is it something more long-term for us?
This would be a short-term lease.
Ending November 30th, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct, for August 1st to November 30th. So no, nothing long-term.
Would we use it long-term? I mean, the county would have to obviously agree to pay for it, but,
They would.
and they're not gonna do that, probably.
You can probably only stretch the care of dollars so far.
Yeah, right. I just don't know if we even need it, I don't know. If it works, we'll see.
Yes, I think we'll see, and
It's
it
just
all
one of those
depends
things
on
where
how
it's-
long COVID stays around.
It's one of those things too, it's like right here, it's basically sort of on our campus, and if we needed it and had a way to keep it, rather than having somebody else take it, it's just me thinking out loud, but anyway, I don't care that much, again, you hate to see it fall into somebody else's hands.
But your
when we
point
could
is well
use it.
taken, because if we think from a futuristic perspective, and look at the potential for expanding our facility in various capacities and ways that would benefit the community and the voters, I think that's something we could explore. It would,
Yeah.
after we get through this, though.
Not a big deal, I just, again. just
Yeah,
something
no,
that-
it's
one of those things that
something to
makes you
consider.
Somebody moves in there and signs a, long-term lease, then it is what it is. Anyway, I'm in favor of the resolution for what it's worth, and I'm prepared to move that we adopt the resolution, and that would be a resolution, I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2020-003.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Great discussion, by the way. Next on the agenda is the resolution authorizing extension of electronic poll book agreement, resolution number 2020-004. Who's going to discuss that?
Yes, I will. This resolution is, as it states, it's extending our electronic poll book agreement with our vendor 10X. The original contract was entered into in 2015. It's expiring, and Tenex has agreed to extend that contract for another additional 5 years at the same cost that we've been paying for the previous 5 years.
Yeah, you know, for those of us that were here when we rolled this out, I have positive things to say. I mean, I would look to the staff to tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not here day to day, but we had, you know, when we rolled it out, we all remember it was a little like we expected. It, you know, it wasn't perfect, but I remember how hard they worked to make that right.
Absolutely. And we've done so much more with the system in the last 5 years, such as automating our help desk. That all came through our vendor, Tenex. They've been giving us good support.
Yeah.
We're happy with the product and their service.
Good, yeah. I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2020-004.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is approval of full-time staff appointments.
Sally
Sally?
has the first. one.
I've always appreciated that we try to make a motion about your people and vice versa. So I'm going to move that we appoint Chase Engel to the election warehouse coordinator position in the operations department.
Thank you. Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries.
And we also recommend the full-time appointment of Lynn McFarland to election coordinator, also in the operations department.
And I would like to indicate that that is not a relative of mine. The name is not spelled the way I spell my name, just for points of clarification.
Yes.
Good.
And in
Problem I
keeping-
never have, Madam Chair.
In keeping with Alex's point, I will make the motion in this case.
I'll second your motion.
Okay, any discussion, any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone abstaining? Okay, or no vote? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is on the agenda is equipment allocation for the August 4th, 2020 special election. We need to discuss that and approve that.
Yes, if you recall, the board previously approved the allocation for the August 4th special election, but Secretary of State directive does require you to re-review that within 30 days of the election day. We've had no substantial changes to registration numbers in those two jurisdictions.
It's fine. I'm prepared to move to approve the acquisition, allocation, and distribution of voting equipment for the August 4th, 2020 special election.
Second.
Just a quick question. So do we have, by approving this motion, that's documentation for the Secretary of State? That's enough, right?
Correct, it's just that the minutes reflect that.
Okay, because I
Correct.
didn't see any signatures.
No, it's just required a vote in public session.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, on our agenda is ballot and provisional envelope quantities for the August 4th, 2020 special election.
Yes, this is the same as the equipment allocation. You
Okay.
previously approved that in an earlier meeting, but you are required to re-review within 30 days.
I'll move approval then of the proposed equipment allocation for the August 4th, 2020 special election.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Okay. Other business. Aye.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
From staff, all we have is to discuss future meeting dates.
Oh, shoot, I didn't bring my phone. Okay.
So we have the August 4th election, so then our next regular meeting would be on Monday, August 3rd at 8:30 a.m.
Okay.
And then the board traditionally stands in recess and reconvenes on Tuesday, August 4th at 6:30 p.m., if that time works for the board on August 4th at 6:30.
What day was that again?
Tuesday, August 4th. So it'd be Monday, August 3rd at 8:30 a.m., and then reconvene Tuesday, August 4th at 6:30 p.m.
Which is-
8:30, yeah,
which is
got
what
that,
we
I already have that on the calendar. So on Tuesday, the 4th, did you say 6 or 6:30?
Whichever time works best for the
6:30 is
board.
better for me if
30 works.
if that works for everybody.
That works?
6:30 is good with me.
Works with, fine, should be. I'm sure it will. I'll make it work if it
I'll,
doesn't.
I'll send an email, a follow-up email
Okay, thank you.
as a reminder
Okay.
to check your calendar. And then we will need a special meeting, staff's recommending August 17th at 8:30 a.m. That would be to approve the provisionals and certify the August election, and then also certify the questions and issues to the November ballot,
Works for me, I've already got it down.
August 17th at 8:30.
Okay. What day of the week is that? Tuesday?
Monday.
Monday?
The Monday,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Any other times?
That's it for now. I think we go back to the regular schedule for September and October
Okay,
that's previously scheduled.
thank you. I would like to, well, we have our Secretary of State liaison in the person here. Kenny, do you want, is there anything that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, definitely. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kenny Henning with Secretary LaRosa's administration. I first really wanted to thank Sherry and Sally for the work they did for the press conference we had here last week with Western and Southern. Secretary LaRosa was very, very appreciative of the efforts of putting it together so quickly, a day, week, and I know Western and Southern was out of the office, but your staff did a tremendous job helping us get it organized. And it demonstrated the type of partnerships we would like to continue to see moving forward. And I know it's something our team is going to work to see that more of these partnerships happen here in Hamilton County. They have me working on it in my 13 other counties. It was a great opportunity for the public to learn about their chance to serve on Election Day. And hopefully Western and Southern will have a few more employees participate this year. Like you were saying in regards to the CARES funding agreement, your team got it in yesterday. The plans have to be submitted, and then once the plans are approved by our office, the county BOE will receive those funds in full at once. And they also will go in a HAVA line item, if that's what you have. It won't go to the county's general fund. So we're moving forward with that right now, and I know that I've talked with both Sally and Sherry in regards to some concerns they've had in the directive. Other larger counties around the state of Ohio have had some similar concerns. So we're trying to get past some of these and collaborate with other counties to make sure we can make that money stretch and use it as best we can. Here to be helpful with whatever I can with the directive, and hopefully we'll have that money in your line item by the end of the month.
Okay.
Questions from me from our team?
Your press conference generated at least one person who was interested. I don't know if that ever went anywhere, did it? Not yet, not yet, okay.
Nothing confirmed yet.
Yeah, one local business owner saw it,
Oh, great.
saw the news and
Fantastic.
stopped me, kind of in a more personal setting, and I tried to connect them to Sherry, and hopefully it works, so.
Awesome. We actually had a tour too of the Holocaust Center at the Cincinnati Museum last week on Tuesday. And the center staff spoke to us about their mission of promoting being upstanding citizens. And they want to have a voter registration area at like the exit of their Holocaust Center. So that's another thing we were I was working with the Cincinnati Museum staff to see if that's something we could do. And once I get more information, I'll share it with Sally.
Fantastic. And I also, basically, because of that press conference and the recruitment, really great media that we're doing as far as asking for recruitment of poll workers, UC has contacted me, a couple departments. So one person has signed up from UC, and they're teaching a class, so they plan to virtually see if they can get some other of their students, signed up. I've also interacted with the faith-based community. And so we have on board, and they've requested, and I'll get with Sally and Sherry on that, a virtual educational forum to talk about how they can, because the woman who's in charge of that is Pastor Jones, and she is the president of the Interdenominational Alliance. So we're coordinating with the faith base as a whole, not just one particular faith. And then to bring in the interdenominational also is an attribute as well.
Fantastic. And I know they'll be busy. If there's anything I can do to help, please
Mhm.
share my contact information.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just
Holly,
wanted
you
to-
were gonna say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I think we've already given supplies to staff at the museum center.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, Kyle Dahlman from our poll worker department has correspondence with him, so maybe he can update you on what we've done.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Oh, and there's another women's organization called Drifters, Cincinnati Drifters, and their membership is about 20, and they're gonna try and get 2 people to sign up, but they'll be working through the BOE, to get those names to us. So it looks promising. We have, Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong with these figures, we have to fill at least 1,200 or more.
That's our estimate, correct?
And then always have a backup in case someone at the last moment, something extenuating occurs and they cannot make it.
Correct.
I know the secretary says the thing that keeps him up at night is the PEO numbers, especially this year. So our team's working really hard. In the directive, it states that the boards are to share if there's a PEO shortage by October 2nd. Move into October and the early voting time, knowing that we're okay on numbers, so we'll be working hard and
I'd like to, for us, Sherry, tell me, Sally, if this is realistic, you're talking about October the 2nd. I would like to say after Labor Day that we should have more concrete data and information where we're going, and then we can aggressively work more for October the 2nd. I always like to be ahead of the game versus behind it.
So do we. I think it will be closer to the end of September. We have talked about, we've already mailed surveys to all of our current poll workers, asking them to commit. We're still receiving those surveys back, making robocalls from those that have not returned. Our confirmation packets typically go out the week after Labor Day. We are talking about mailing them out a little earlier. We do send with them the quick guide is our plan this time. That's difficult to finalize before we have the official form of the ballot, which doesn't come until September 14th. So all these things sort of build on each other with the different processes. So we're hoping to know sooner than we typically do. But I think probably the end of September, or October 2nd is a more realistic.
I always shoot for ahead of time instead of right on time. Okay, all right. Anything else?
that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny.
Much for the great job that you're doing,
Thank you.
networking with us as well.
I appreciate it.
You know, we were talking about getting prepared for November the 3rd, and there was some discussion, there's been some discussion this past week regarding absentee ballot drop boxes. And when Kenny mentioned about the museum, wanting to get involved, and I think we are all looking from a proactive manner how we, as a board here in Hamilton County, can continue to develop partnerships to make our voting universe safe, secure, and voters could have access to voting. So the discussion has arisen about absentee ballot drop boxes. And as I've probed and done some deep diving, it appears that this is possibly something that we should review and can look at. I know that there was discussions about, is this legal or illegal? It is not illegal, but it seems, if we look at this from a best practice perspective, is this something that we can look at that would create a safe, secure, and convenient avenue for our voters here in Hamilton County? I also know that one of the things that I was so impressed with when speaking with LaRose last week was he continues to focus on us working together as a team in a nonpartisan way, that we should never get politics involved in this whole voting process, and I support him for that so much, and I applaud him for verbally saying that, and that's what he said at the press conference. For me, I think the COVID-19 has presented a very unusual situation for everyone, not just here in the county, but globally as well. And I applaud Sally and you, Sherry, both of you working together to look at how we can deliver and sustain and be able to do in-person voting, which is the Secretary of State is supporting that as well. And that means, you know, recruiting poll workers, not only inside but outside as well, but making sure our universe is safe. So when I looked at the data so far, I found it interesting, and is it something that we could look at? I know I questioned some things, and Sally provided a directive to me that says there is something in a law or in a policy book that says the voter may deliver the absentee ballots personally or may have a family member deliver the absentee ballot by the close of the polls on election day at the office of the Board of Elections only. So when I look at that, because there was some argument, we really have to do this, but it can only be one in a county, and that one has to be at the Board of Election. But this says absentee ballot by the close of the day, which to me looks like the last day of voting. So the directive, as most directives do, provides some flexibility. And I don't know when this was written, but I can probably state comfortably that we were not in a pandemic COVID-19 crisis as we are today. So I think we should think out of the box and continue to think out of the box, looking at what opportunities, because this is presenting opportunities in a fair and just manner, that we can look at what we can do to take the pressure off of not only our election officials, but also off of our voters as well. I know, and many of you may recall this with the primary, the last maybe 48 to 72 hours that folks were coming through to vote and dropping their ballots off, we had traffic backed up. We had traffic backed up all the way on one end to 71 and the other end close to Reading Road on the Norwood Lateral. That's one car each. It was backed that far. They couldn't even get to the one box that we had. So I think that we should look at, if there is an opportunity to do this, let's look at it and explore it and bring in partnership with our other governmental partners. I know that the county health commissioners have looked at this. I know that they're looking at it in some of the other counties as well. And I also reviewed it, and I know that they have such boxes in other states in the United States. So I'd like us to discuss it, but also to request, since we have our liaison here, that we look at this and just ask our Secretary of State, can we make this happen? We've got the public libraries that are open. They're going to be opening. Those are secure places. We've got the courthouse. We've got other government offices, and I know you have to have a camera. It has to be secured. I know all of that. But if this is an opportunity to take the pressure off of our elected election officers and our staff, you know, so that we don't have this huge dumping of ballots at the last moment, I think we should look at that and think out of the box in a proactive manner. So that's just my thoughts.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Following up on that, I think one of the things we saw in April, and not so much in Hamilton County, but in other parts of the state, the post office was unable to get ballots delivered on time, even though the voter had done everything that they were supposed to have done. Ballots were still arriving more than 10 days after Election Day, and as a consequence, they were not counted. The volume of absentee ballots that we're likely to see this November, as Sherry mentioned, I think is probably going to be much, much larger. The pressure on this facility and on the drop box in front of this building is going to correspondingly be bigger. I'd like to go a step further than what you mentioned. I think I'd like to make a motion that we investigate the cost and the feasibility of possibly as many as 4 additional drop boxes in the county. I think, just kind of off the top of my head, one possibly at the Anderson Township admin building, and the west side, maybe Cheviot or Green Township, northern part of the county, maybe Springdale, and one down by the county administration building at the courthouse. I think that would assist the voters in being able to be comfortable that their ballot is in the possession of the Board of Elections, and for that matter, their absentee application. They don't have to rely necessarily on the post office. And I think what our overall effort here ought to be is to try and make it as smooth as possible under difficult circumstances for the voters to be able to participate in this election this November. So, we do need some clarification from the Secretary. What you quoted, I believe, is in the form of a directive, which is not state law. It's probably a directive that, as you mentioned, was written quite some time ago. And I think it's also true that in some counties, the drop box that they have is not at the Board of Elections office. It's somewhere else. I see nothing in that would necessarily preclude the possibility of more than one drop box. And in the interest of time, I'd certainly like to know, what kind of cost is involved. What are the feasibility aspects of this, in addition to clarification from the Secretary of State's office. So my motion would be that we move promptly to investigate that and potentially be able to discuss that at our meeting in the beginning of August.
Okay. Any discussion?
President, a second, yeah.
Pardon?
No? Any other comments? Because you got a motion?
That's a motion on my part, yes.
Okay. Need a second?
I'm not prepared to second it, so I'm prepared to discuss it, though, and I may vote for it, but I just, taking it you're going to second it, Madam Chair?
Yes, I am.
Very good. So if there's a second, then I'm prepared for the discussion.
I second that motion.
Thank you. So I'm not for or against at this moment. Your motion is about investigating it, and I'll listen. My concerns are threefold. Obviously, I don't want to be in violation of the directive. I wonder if getting a legal opinion isn't part of what we do here, just to get a sense of what we can and can't do. My understanding, again, just from down here, that in Cincinnati, that Columbus had a debate about multiple drop boxes. I say this without any certainty about what I'm saying, but as I understood it, there at least was a conversation about this in the recent legislation. If that was the case, and there was a conversation about it, and our elected legislature decided not to allow for it, that will certainly weigh on my mind as well. And then this idea of uniformity, right? I mean, if you're in Cuyahoga County and you have one, but you're in Hamilton County, there are 5, then we start getting, then politics inevitably is going to creep in. So I want to make sure not in violation of state law, or at least the intent of our legislature with their recent action, that we're not in violation of the directive, and that if we're going to do something, it's done uniformly. So I suppose I'll likely vote for the motion just so we can look at those things, but I just want to be clear about where I am on the issue. And I don't, in principle, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I do see a lot of other problems, very candidly. I mean, monitoring the boxes, our staff having to go out and get them, the concerns about ballot harvesting, which is always a problem. That's illegal under state law. This idea that, somebody will go gather 50 ballots and at 3 a.m. drop them off in Springdale. Those things give me heartburn and should concern citizens. So all those things are concerns. But I, nevertheless, will again vote for the motion. If it came down that we were doing it uniformly statewide, I'd be much more comfortable supporting it. But at this point, I'll be in favor of the motion to investigate it. I can't promise that I'll be for it.
Chair?
Yeah, Madam Chair, the as I read that directive, it seems clear to me that it states that there shall only be one location where these absentee ballots are delivered. And it refers to the location, not the date. And so I'm not sure about us as a Board of Elections investigating this matter without clear direction from the Secretary of State. And I agree with Alex's point about the recent legislative discussion as well on this issue. Well, I guess my point is, our investigating this may be a moot point if we have no clear direction from the Secretary of State. Because what we want here at the Hamilton County Board of Elections, if it is contrary to the directive or what else is going on around the state of Ohio, is something that I don't think we can or should do. So if we're going to pursue this discussion, I think first we have to get direction from the Secretary on this matter, and then that will answer the question for all of us. Again, we've been through this before where Hamilton County did things differently than other counties, sending out notifications, and ultimately we were directed not to do that. There had to be uniformity among all of the counties. So I'm not sure how I feel about this without clear direction from the Secretary of State. So I'm not trying to you have a motion that's been seconded on the table, and I'm not sure exactly how we move forward on this. And,
I would like to add a comment, because the questions have been raised, but it's not considered harvesting. If I am a family member and we have a family gathering and they requesting absentee ballots and/or then they would request that, and we could get those forms filled out and we could drop that down in the mail. To me, that's not harvesting. So I think we need clarification regarding what harvesting means, because harvesting, the way it can be perceived is that it's illegal to do that, but yet it's clearly states a family member can do that, if it's family, So I guess harvesting means non-family members. I don't know, but there are groups that go out and do this work as well. Definitely it's something that we need to pass on to the Secretary of State, but at some point you've got to start somewhere. And right now, we are in a pandemic COVID-19 health crisis, and we cannot allow ourselves to be held hostage, perhaps by an old directive to keep us from moving forward and addressing the issues and concerns. That's where I'm concerned. Who knows where we're even going to be on November the 3rd. But I think if we take one step at a time and think out of the box, and then, yes, I agree, it has to involve the Secretary of State. But I think we still I think it's an opportunity to explore, is this feasible? And if so, partnershiping with other government agencies in Hamilton County, how can this happen? I believe, in some of the conversations I've been in since I met with the Secretary of State last week, there are government agencies, facilities, libraries that want to help partnership to make this work better and smoother for all of us. So I think, as the old saying says, if not now, when? So I think it's time.
If I could add a couple of comments, partly in response to Chip's comments. The reason I think we should investigate the cost and feasibility without waiting for a response from the Secretary of State, it's just a matter of timeliness. It may be some time before we get a clear response from the Secretary of State, and time is ticking away rather quickly. If we were going to try and do this before November, we need to move quickly. And so I'm uncomfortable with delay in investigating the cost and feasibility. Secondly, we have on election day, I think, maybe 270 polling locations typically. varies a little bit. from-
Closer to 310.
And close to 300, okay.
You're close.
Pardon?
You're close.
Okay.
Better than I would have done.
So, you know, the polling locations and the number of polling locations in Hamilton County is a product of how many registered voters we have and a product of the population. There are counties where they may have only 20 polling locations because the population is much, much smaller than Hamilton County. And there are counties in Ohio which are even lot. Our population is roughly, I think, 880,000. Both Franklin and Cuyahoga County are well over 1 million. So my point is that we have multiple polling locations due to population. I don't see any difference between that and the idea of additional drop boxes in relation to the number of people who are voting here in Hamilton County. So I just think that's an important aspect of this as well.
And I concur, and Sherry, you've heard, and Sally, you heard me have said, you know, whatever deadlines we have, I always like to work ahead of the deadlines in a proactive manner. And when you look at the state of Ohio, we have 3 counties, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland. Those are normally the trailblazers because we have the majority of the population. So this short time I've been on the board, I don't have the history, of course, like Caleb and Alex, but I will tell you, I believe we have one of the most progressive Board of Elections and one of the best organizational structure of even those counties that are much more heavily populated than we are. And I believe that we can work collectively to continue, as we have done, to make this a win-win for our folks here in Hamilton County. So I'd like to entertain, now, we have a motion that's been.
Can I,
yes.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Dave, I don't want to put you totally on the spot, because it looks like the motion that's on the table, obviously, is just to investigate. That may include coming to you. If you want to just punt now and wait until you have a chance to look at it, fine, but I don't know if you want to be heard on this topic.
I think you need to decide what it is you want me to look at before anything
Okay.
else. And you know, obviously, you know, Caleb's comment about the directive not being law, well, no, it's not passed by the secretary, or it's not passed by the legislature, but it is something you have to follow.
Right.
That's the only comment I'd have at this point. But if there's something specific that you want us to look at, and I think Sherry and Sally can figure that out, we can do that down the road.
That's fine. That dovetails into another point that I wanted to make, and that is that a couple people, including Chip and others, have said we need directions for the secretary. It sounds to me, again, this was on other business, so I didn't, you know, don't have the directive, but it sounds like we have that in the form of a directive. And again, Sherry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, there is a directive that addresses this issue, right? So we have some direction from the secretary already, whether it was this secretary or prior one, right?
Yes, we do have a directive that outlines how a ballot may be returned by a voter to the Board of Elections. Returned by personal delivery states a voter may deliver the absentee ballot personally or may have a family member deliver the absentee ballot by the close of polls on Election Day at the office of the Board of Elections only.
Can I
So-
make a quick comment to that? I think I mentioned before, there are places in Ohio where the drop box is not at the Board of Elections. So basically, that means that when a ballot or an application goes into that drop box, it is then in the possession of the Board of Elections, regardless of where the location of the box is. I don't see that language as excluding more than one location. It just says we have to have one. And secondly, with respect to directives, there's no reason why a secretary can't reconsider the directive under the difficult circumstances that we're now facing and offer some clarification, and for that matter, to modify that directive. It's not something that's dictated by the legislature. It's within the discretion of the secretary to address. And so I think it's appropriate for us to ask for the secretary to do that. But in the meantime, it's also appropriate for us to figure out, you know, what's involved in doing all this. So that's the purpose of my motion.
How do you guys feel about of getting a formal legal opinion from our prosecutor that essentially asks the broad question, Dave, probably not how you want it, but could we add 4 drop boxes? That's what you were proposing, right? 4 in addition to the one here, so 4.
That makes sense to me, one east,
Okay.
north, west.
Can we add consistent with the law and directives? Is that how you'd want us to phrase the issue to you?
But if that's is the specific question you're looking at, yeah, but I think frankly, Caleb's motion is to investigate the cost and other
Sure.
things,
Right.
which is different than asking for a specific legal opinion on whether you can. Frankly, I'm not sure there's not some benefit to doing some of that investigation and deciding whether you need one.
Fair enough. Yep, I got it. And the other thing that I'm hearing, and the other lawyers are hearing, is there's going to be some question of interpretation here, and that's not your role. Fair enough, right? I
Well,
mean,
my role would be, if you ask a specific legal question, I would interpret what the directive says in connection with the state
Yeah,
law.
yeah.
That's what I would do.
But there could be a
And-
dispute about interpretation, and
Right.
again, that's not fair.
I
to
don't
ask
want
you.
us to get into any type of dispute. I don't want it to become a political fiasco. I want to do what's right for voters to ensure that we will have a safe and secure voting process. So to minimize and decrease to the best of our ability the continuous spread of COVID-19. Definitely the key person in this whole discussion is the Secretary of State. And I think from what I've learned a little bit about directives, they give you a little bit of wiggle room, a little flexibility. But we all know this is the first time in 100 years that we've had anything like this. And this is a new universe, lots of different challenges, lots of different opportunities. So I want to make sure the Secretary, definitely a state is involved. And I don't want any, I would like us to work hard to avoid this becoming a war of words between attorneys. Excuse me, excuse me.
Good luck on that.
Alex.
No problem.
So that we can move forward and do what we feel is appropriate and is right, and follow the due process for our voters here. Any more discussion?
Nope.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I appreciate this conversation, but I think that we are putting ourselves as an individual board out in front of the operative question, which Caleb eloquently articulated, that this is up to the Secretary of State to look at this directive at this time and determine how best to undertake this election. I think that it is not our role to get in front of that decision. So I'm not going to be supporting this motion for that reason.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any more discussion? We ready? You've made a motion, I've seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Very eloquent discussion. I enjoy this type of discussion because the more you learn, the better you can become at making critical decisions. And one final thing I'd like to raise, we now are mandated in Hamilton, in the city of Cincinnati, in some surrounding areas, but particularly in the city of Cincinnati, to wear a mask in the workplace. Wearing masks in the workplace when you are, I don't think you have to wear them when you're sitting at your desk, but you should be wearing masks all the time. How are we doing with our staff following that ruling?
We're doing better as we, the guidelines on this change quite frequently. And as we receive more and more information from the public health officials, we share that with our staff. Our policy based on the guidelines we received from the public health department is that when you're sitting in your workspace, you may remove your mask. When you leave your workspace, you put your mask on. If you're seated 6 feet apart, you may take it off. And which is what our policy and what our practice is here. And we need reminders to staff. But yeah, it's something that we're working on. And we do have plenty of masks available.
So when you give a gentle reminder to me, I haven't worn my mask for hours. You see me running in and out of the kitchen and the bathroom, and you've given me a gentle reminder more than once. Then I'm going to leave it up to the two leaders here to make sure that that doesn't continue to happen. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I want to applaud, excuse me, I have to put my mask on. And I want to applaud everybody that is comfortable with following that, because again, we are trying to minimize the risk of COVID-19 within our universe. And I applaud you because, as many of you know, I have a very, very close friend who is compromised. And I must feel safe when I'm walking in this building because, and I do, because I interact with her and I take her to her clinic appointments. And so for those who continue, have asked why am I, have shaved my head, again, I will say this again, I did it for her in support of sisterhood and solidarity. And feels pretty good, and I may continue to do this. One of my friends, the coroner, said, well, Gwen, maybe you want to get a blonde wig. No, I'm not going to be Sherry. You know, I don't think I could wear
Sherry
a
have a blonde wig?
But I just, I feel safe, I feel comfortable, and that's why I raised that question. When I come here, I very seldom go into public places, but I have to feel comfortable when I come in and when I leave.
We actually just purchased for staff, Board of Elections, sort of buffs, mask, more of what you have. And we've also purchased, it's not really a fanny pack, but a little pack that we are planning on using to welcome our temporary staff when they come back, and that'll be, because they move around the building a lot, so that'll have a supply of hand sanitizers, disinfecting wipes, masks, their own pens, that sort of thing, that little welcome package when they come back, so that they have that on them as they move around the building.
I like that. And as you all know, last week when the press conference was held, I had my mask and it said vote across the front. So that became an item of discussion when Chip and I were outside and we were being interviewed. And so the comment was made about mine. And so, of course, Chip could not be outdone. So he had to show his socks that said vote. So we are coordinated, both of us, all of us. That's right.
Can I just be clear on the issue of masks? I support everything you've said, Madam Chair, and just so it's clear, I've had at least one person tell me they have a hard time hearing, which is why mine is here.
Okay.
I'm seated in my workspace 6 feet apart. The only reason I'm not wearing it, otherwise, as soon as I get from my workspace, I will comply and follow the mandates. But I think the reason I'm not wearing it at the moment is I want to make sure folks can hear us clearly, and I'm complying with the order by being 6 feet apart in my workspace here. But I otherwise intend
Yes,
to
we
fully
are.
comply, so thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any other discussion or any other points before we adjourn?
I'll move adjournment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone objecting? Abstaining? As they would say at this particular time, none but the devil.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.